County Executive Committee to order, please. We will start with item number 2 on the agenda, Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My agenda disappeared. Okay, next is public comment, and no one has addressed the clerk or myself to address the committee. And just a reminder, the mics stay where they're at, and so please don't pick them up. Don't move them around. If you need to, just lean into the mics. They do pick up quite well, so please just try to utilize them where they are in place. We'll move on to approval of the minutes of the February 13th Executive Committee meeting. The minutes were in your packet. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Marash and seconded by Supervisor Drabek. Any discussion on the minutes as presented? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And we will move on to policy issue and potential committee determination, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy. We have a discussion and possible action by the executive committee. And I'd like to have a discussion about how agenda items are flows to the clerk's office. We had several opportunities to make clarification, because obviously the committee agendas are the chair's responsibility. And so I turned it over to Administrator Leonard to give a little bit of feedback that was provided to the department heads.
Yeah, actually, we're going to be providing that to the department heads tomorrow. So in our quest for continuous improvement, we're always looking to try to better serve each of you as chairs of your standing committees. So in speaking with Kim and her team, here are a couple of thoughts we had, and we'd like your feedback. I don't really think I don't anticipate having a need for action today, but certainly want to hear your thoughts. To make it clearer, because we do have some things based on the way our agendas are set up. Of course, we have policy actions, operational functions, and then educational presentations, particularly as it relates to operational functions. There are things that, based on past actions by the board or a committee, staff are working on things and then need to bring it back to the committee for some sort of formal evaluation and potential action. So there is value, I think, from the administration perspective to have staff be able to submit items to get on the agendas, but I think there's an opportunity to do that more effectively. A lot of times those emails are going directly to Kim and not to all of you as chairs. So the direction I'm going to give my department heads is that as part of that process, and Lori's a great example, right? She's here to talk with you all about the comprehensive plan. I know that Chair Gibbs is well aware of what the obligations are, but there are a lot of things that you might have taken action on 2 years ago. Infrastructure is another good example. There was an action taken quite a long time ago about, hey, every quarter we need to have formal presentations on safety evaluations and safety updates and recommendations brought. Well, staff are keeping track of that, and we're going back and saying, hey, we're here again for our quarterly meeting. That might not be readily apparent to a chair. So our thought process to how to make this better is I'm going to direct the department heads that when they have those occasions, if they need to submit an item, that it not just go to Kim, but that the email requesting an item be put on an agenda, that each of the chairs be included, the chair of the committee, I should say, be included on the email to Kim or her team, and that the specific request have language, one, that talks about where on the agenda does it really need to live. Is this a policy issue? Is it an operational function that is required? Or is it a request for an educational presentation? Apart from that, it also needs to give a brief explanation. I'm not looking for a paragraph, certainly not a page, not even a paragraph, but just maybe a sentence or two about why the agenda item is being requested. So for example, if it's a Health and Human Services agenda, because we received a grant award that was greater than what was originally budgeted to such an extent that we need a budget amendment, the email would come from Social Services Director Krista Jensen saying, Chair Boots, I'm requesting that we place on the next Health and Human Services agenda an item under the operational functions required by statute section worded as follows, resolution to accept a budget amendment based on grant award because we received XYZ grant in a greater amount than originally was budgeted. So that's what you'll see. My hope is that's what you'll see in terms of those emails. So it might look and feel a little bit different. The other thing I'm going to try to institutionalize in our process is that before those requests get to you via email and get to Kim via email, that we ensure that legal, finance, and admin have kind of vetted those to make sure it's going to the right spot. So I don't fundamentally expect your agendas to look and feel any different, but you might be included on more emails than you would have been in the past. So we just wanted to, after Kim and I talked and kind of game planned, and I, again, plan on giving this overview to department heads tomorrow at our department head meeting and talking that through. So I wanted to see if there were Kim and I wanted to see if there were any feedback, any concerns with the process, but really not looking for formal action to adopt it. I think it'll just be better. But if you do have feedback at any point about, hey, I think this would be better if we do X, Y, or Z, please let us know.
Kim, you got any additional thoughts?
My only other additional request of you all is that per your board rules, agenda items are due in our office by Wednesday afternoon. So my staff puts the draft agendas together and then they send them to you for your approval and sign off. So if you could please watch for those emails to come either Wednesday afternoon or Thursday morning and then promptly reply with agenda looks good or we need an addition or correction here, that would be greatly appreciated. Sometimes we're at 2:00 on a Friday afternoon when we're up against our posting deadline and we still haven't gotten confirmation from a chair that the agenda is okay to go to publication. So if we could get some help in that regard, it would greatly be appreciated. Thank you.
And quite honestly, I know staff are sometimes the root cause of that. So that's why we have these conversations frequently about how can we make this a bit more timely. And I think including you each of you as chairs on the front end. So you see what is the item? Why is it being requested and specifically where on your agenda the request is for the item to be included. I'm hoping it kind of helps the end goal of getting those things to Kim in a more timely fashion. So you probably will see more emails. That's why we wanted to kind of give you that front end information.
Any feedback from the committee? Anything from Vice Chair Dickinson or Supervisor Boots?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Nothing here.
Thank you, Supervisor Boots, and thank you, Vice Chair Dickinson. And we'll then move on to educational presentation and committee discussion on Chapter 8 of the Marathon County Comprehensive Plan. And we have the CPZ Director, Miss Kimmons, here with us again. And she's welcome back all the time. And
Oh,
so,
thank you. Thank you, Chair Gibbs.
with
Even
that,
though I think
will-
I'm one of the problem children for Kim, but
So I'll turn it over to Lori. Lori, please.
all right. Thank you, Chair Gibbs. So this month, we're bringing to you the working draft of Chapter 8. So this is our first look at it with the Executive Committee. We brought it to the Infrastructure Committee last week, and we've also done initial meetings with highways, solid waste, and airports on starting to update this chapter as they're the predominant departments involved within this chapter. I'll go through quickly some of the changes that we have been working on, and then talk a little bit about the objectives at the end of the chapter and the issues so that we can get some initial feedback from the executive committee. We did add a handful of plans since we did the original comprehensive plan in 2016, including the roadway safety plan. We had 2 master plans that have been completed by the airport that were added in. We also have completed the stormwater quality management plan in 2022, and solid waste also has their strategic plan that they update every 5 years. They just started their recent update of that this year that they felt should be included in this chapter as well. And including the other plans that were listed before, most of them have been updated since 2016, so we just reflected the new dates and information that has changed there. As far as the transportation section, which starts on page 4 of your packet there, a few minor changes in terms of roadway network and transportation data that we're going through and updating. One of the conversations we had with highways was that we felt we do need to add a section in, and this would be on page 9 of your packet. It's not in there yet. There's just a placeholder to try and give more information to the county road maintenance and what goes into that, including our PACER rating information and information we have about the age of their equipment and how and when we replace that. So we wanted to build a section into the chapter for that. So that will come a little later when we bring the full draft back to you all later this year. Going through the chapter a little bit more, airports did update a lot of things again in the airport section on page 11 of your packet, page 8 of the chapter, that goes through some of the changes that have happened there since they've done their master planning and updates there. Let's see, the other thing going towards utilities on page, I always lose this page. Page 13 of the chapter, page 16 of your packet, we did also want to add a section on our stormwater management requirements through the county, so we'll get that built in. And then finally, the other background information in energy, we're expanding the sections on natural gas and renewable energy to address some of the changes that we're seeing there. And we've done a complete update on the telecommunication facilities and services section to try and address the broadband expansion that's going on throughout the county, understanding that right now we do have some stuff in there about the BEAD program. I know some of that's evolving and changing, so we'll probably have to finalize that closer to the end of this year to determine what's going on with that program. And solid waste management, we also made several updates there related to the closing of one landfill site and the opening of Bluebird Ridge and some other things they have going on, of course, with renewable gas going in out there as well. The other thing that solid waste had suggested we added to was just a little bit more information about the operations at the landfill to give a little bit more context to what it takes to operate that facility. In terms of issues, the infrastructure issues that we've talked through with the departments and the infrastructure committee thus far, I think the common theme across the departments, it's under sustainable transportation, and then in that area in red underneath is generally there just continues to be an issue with our infrastructure in terms of sustainable operations. That's always going to be a focus for the county. So how can we be more sustainable and efficient and invest in things like maintenance at a time when it'll be most cost effective? So that's going to continue to be an issue for the county that they need to address. Transit, we did keep in there. I think the transit conversation through the Metropolitan Planning Organization with our partners, definitely there's still a desire and a need for transit, especially for our senior and aging populations. But the type of transit or the needs is somewhat changing in the sense that in talking with our surrounding communities in this past several months, they've talked more about that they want to look at different options like point-to-point microtransit instead of fixed service routes. So it's not a priority for them to see fixed service route transit in their communities right now, but as MetroRide continues to evolve or change their service, there might be interest in some types of transit service expanding outside the Wausau boundary. The other thing we added or evolved on was for CWA, just talking about that need to continue to remain competitive with the regional pilot and aircraft shortages, that there are some communities that are looking at different revenue guarantees and other ways to attract those markets to their area. So CWA just brought it up that that's going to continue to be something that we might want to consider as a county to get that kind of service here in central Wisconsin. And we did add an issue related to PFAS, as we know that's continuing to be an evolving issue for our community that we're going to have to continue to address. In terms of the objectives on page 25 of the packet or page 22 of the chapter, there wasn't much change proposed yet in the objectives. There's been some conversation about just looking at some of the word choices in the objectives. For example, when you look at the utilities goal and objective 1, ensure compliance with state codes for new and replacement of POUT systems. So that's the word ensure there seems to make sense in that we are an agent of the state. We can ensure that new systems and replacement systems going in are meeting codes. But when you look at number 2, using the word ensure, it might be better to consider something like changing that to the word promote, since we don't have sole control over determining if we get adequate energy, telecommunication services, things like that. So some of the conversations have been about that, whether or not the objectives might need to change some of the wording to look at issues where we control them versus issues where we influence them. So I will open it up for conversation there. Oh, and I forgot to add, the other thing is that highways, airport, and solid waste all brought forward possibly just adding an overall objective, again, related to long-term sustainability of operations. So that's what we have thus far, so still some more work to do.
Questions, comments, thoughts? Supervisor Robinson, please.
I think from the county roads perspective, you've got 600 miles, and I think we've been looking at the lane miles, which translates into a significant large number. But I think it would be helpful to have a discussion about the status of the roads relative to all-season versus weight-restricted roads, because I think that's important as we begin to look at the ARIP dollars, the Agricultural Road Improvement Program, and the eligibility for it, just understanding what roads are currently seasonal. I know the Infrastructure Committee when I chaired it, and I know with Supervisor Frick that there are occasionally requests to upgrade the roads, and whether it's O for the industrial park or County B for larger farms. I think that would be helpful. I think your municipal well ordinance needs to also, municipal water service, include a discussion on PFAS, because Edgar, Mosinee, Wausau, Weston, Rib Mountain, Rothschild, Cronin-Water all have had exceedances of the Fed standards. And while you talk about PFAS in leachate, it's also an issue in biosolids and effluent and wastewater discharge, which gets into water quality. I know that's not governed under this this chapter, but I think that it would be helpful. And I think that we, as a county, should figure out what our role is in providing those all-season roads. When you look at Washington County, they have a lot less county roads, but they're all-season. And do we want to be looking at how do we improve the quality? And you go from $250,000 to $2 million a mile for all-season roads. If you're going to do a truly well-designed, engineered road, do we want a policy on that? But I throw it out. And then the final, well, I sense that I didn't see anything in there relative to county trunk highways and the additional shoulders for bike paths, which has been a big discussion in there. And I think if we could capture where we have those shoulders paved, the rumble strips, and how that fits into the multimodal transportation system. And then we've also had an increased utilization of our county roads and others in off-roads relative to ATVs and UTVs, which has been an area. Again, if we're talking about resources, and again, it could be handled in a different chapter, but it would be here. And then the final area in objectives is, you talk about wellhead protection ordinances. More and more communities are looking beyond their municipal lines. I think one of the things we should do is ensure that there's cooperation among communities relative to the adoption and protection of aquifers and through the wellhead protection ordinances. And it's an issue on the western side of the county where there is a lack of water. But I know that in some of the communities in the metro area, the MPO area, they're running out of places to locate wells, and where therefore that cooperation be on the municipal limit would be helpful.
Other comments, other questions? Supervisor Frick, please.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's a good, well, especially about the rumble strips, that we had a good conversation and provided direction on that last year, so I think that would be important to include in their direction that the committee went with that. For everything I've seen, quite well, a bit of a compromise between non-motorized users.
I think, and we touched on it a little bit about PFAS and the spreading of this solid waste from sanitary systems, and what challenges that creates in the other environments and the other communities, because I know some communities are starting to talk about potentially limiting the ability for municipalities to spread their solid waste onto fields. So I don't know if that's something that we need to explore more on, because I do think that that's going to be a bigger issue, especially if there's going to be potential litigation that may come against that landowner by accepting that. I know there's legislation that's trying to exempt them from litigation if they're not the source, but that's beside the point. I think we're starting to hear more and more communities, at least townships, talk about potentially banning the spreading of solid waste or. Any others?
I have my hand raised,
Oh,
Vice Chair.
sorry, Vice Chair Dickinson, please. I didn't have the screen up that showed that you.
That's okay. Yep. So the only thing I would say is, the recommendations made by Supervisor Robinson should be put to the appropriate committee for them to review, as opposed to just put into the work that Laurie is doing. For example, the bicycle multimodal or the weight restricted roads. I mean, that should go back to infrastructure for a discussion with information and data. Does that make sense?
I think it does.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay. And if we're going to talk about, like water, PFAS and all that, I think there can be a discussion for whatever committee to talk about fluoride in the water. So, because I think that's a concern of a lot of constituents. Thank you.
Other thoughts, other discussion?
I'll just
Go ahead, Laura,
I'll just
please.
add that for next month, we're going to be looking at public safety and land use is what we're working on right now. So those two chapters. That's all.
Public safety and what was the other?
Land use, so chapter
land use?
9 and
Okay.
chapter 7. Yeah.
Those will be taken to the appropriate committees
Yes,
for
they'll go to the
discussions?
appropriate committees first, yeah.
Other discussion, other thoughts? Vice Chair Dickinson, you have your hand raised again?
Yeah, I do. I apologize. What I was going to state is that in April, I will be attending the standing committees meetings to talk about the strategic plan as it now sits for updates for this year, and then just kind of getting general discussion about how the committees are working towards those goals. Thank you.
Okay. I think you need to coordinate with the committee chairs and just a thought, just reach out to each of the committee chairs and look at their agendas, so that that discussion happens, and coordinate the verbiage on the agendas.
Yes, sir, will do.
Yep. Other discussion? Other discussion? All right. Well, thank you, Lori, for that update, and thank you for taking those comments and reviewing those with those committees. Committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion, and our next meeting is scheduled for April 10th, 2025 at 3 p.m. Here, any other thing to come before the committee? We are down to item number 9. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Pfeffrick and seconded by Supervisor Arstead to adjourn. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We will see everyone in a couple hours.